Okay, so in the last few minutes of the previous class, we were talking about the movement of substances into and out of cells, and we were just having a random discussion that some substances, obviously, the cell is the basic unit of life, and some substances, not some, many of the substances need to enter and exit from the cell, and they must have a certain pattern. So this movement of substances into and out of cell, now this brings some questions like what um carries out this movement. Like the most important part about this particular question is who who stimulates it, who stimulates it, who basically informs, who basically control these compounds. This is another very important question, that how they are being controlled. So these questions are specifically addressed in this chapter. First of all, remember that in every kind of right now we are talking about movement of substances, movement of substances. So these movements are not related to the movement of cells. These are not related to the movement of any organelle of a cell. These movements are specifically related to the movement of molecules, movement of ions. These kinds of things would be involved in this particular chapter. Now, with respect to exams, and especially with respect to the P6, this particular paper is important because many questions are being asked from this particular chapter, and there are some questions which are specifically made from these cells. I'll show you the questions later. But remember that the molecules and ions, they can move in two ways. Remember, the molecules and ions can be moved in two ways. One type of movement of these molecules and ions is called as the passive movement. The passive movement is when uh, the molecules the molecules move on their own, no energy is uh, provided, no push is given. That basically is called as a passive energy, passive movement of molecule.
Okay.
That is passive. The in this particular now the real question is like how can a molecule how can a molecule move on its own? Can you answer me?
No.
The movement of a molecule on its own is basically a very important thing to know. Remember that every atom or molecule has vibrations in it. Vibrations in it that would cause it to that would cause it to move randomly. Suppose that these are the molecules of a particular compound. These are the molecules, and these molecules are free in a solution. Free in a solution. Now you would clearly see that these molecules would have a movement uh, in which no one is pushing them, but still they are moving. Still they are moving. No one is pushing them. Now that basically called as the kinetic energy. You can simply call it as the kinetic energy of molecules. But remember that this can only happen in the liquids or gases. Why? Why this can only happen in liquids or gases? Please focus here. In liquids or gases, the molecules are not strictly attached to each other. Strictly attached to each other. They can randomly move attached to each other. They can randomly move. Just suppose the movement of a gas. What happens in the movement of a gas? In the movement of a gas, uh, in the movement of a gas, if you open if you open a gas nozzle, it would immediately start spreading all around, isn't it?
Yeah.
That immediate movement all around is basically called as the kinetic energy or just the energy of gas and the random move. So simply putting it, these kinds of substances, these kinds of matters have this kind of behavior because they are not strictly attached to each other. Comparatively, if you talk about a solid molecule, solid compound, all the molecules have a very particular distance from each other and they are very strongly bounded. They are very strongly bonded to each other, and the molecules of you would never see the molecules of a solid moving randomly. No random movement until you break the bond. How would you break the bond of a solid? Suppose plastic. How would you break the bonds?
Burn it maybe. Melt it.
You would melt it. Yeah, you would melt it, and you would free their movement. So in liquid or gases, there is no particular attachment of the molecules. That is why they can easily move, and that is the cause of a passive movement. That is the cause of a passive movement. Okay, so uh, types of passive movements. Let's talk about it. Types of passive movements. There are two types of passive movements that you would often see. One is called as diffusion, and the other one is called as osmosis. I will not currently talk about the osmosis. In the diffusion, how would you define the diffusion?
Particles moving from a high concentration area to a low concentration area.
Hmm. Okay. Now let me give you a more particular way to define it. A random movement of molecules of gases or dissolved molecules in a liquid from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration to an area. Now, try processing the initial words that I have written over there in the definition.
Yeah.
Remember that you need to understand what kind of substances are moving. You need to determine it. If you don't determine it, then it is going to be difficult. It is going to be difficult to understand the actual movement of the actual diffusion movement. Let's see. The molecules, when there is when there are gases, when there are gases, we know that they can randomly move. And about the liquids, we also can say that they can also randomly move. The important part about both of them is the is the high concentration to low concentration. Now my question is, why something would move from high concentration to low concentration, not from low to high?
Because the low area needs it more than the high area.
Simply saying, suppose that I have this particular region. Under the word high, I am drawing many different circles representing the molecules. These are the molecules. Now, these molecules are constantly colliding. These are constantly colliding with each other. Constantly colliding with each other, meaning that they are pushing against each other. Now, what would happen that, and over here you only have 3 or 4 molecules. Where would you see the highest collision? If I say that this is area A and this is area B, where would you see the largest collisions? Hmm?
The higher collisions would be in A.
A. So the molecules keeping on colliding with each other, they would start getting away from the area where they are in high concentration. Why? Because there is too much collision. So the collision is moving them apart. The collision is moving them apart. Now they would simply be moving from area of high concentration to area of low concentration because of this collision. Right now, remember We haven't added any factor. We haven't added any factor. There could be a factor added to increase the speed. We could have added a factor, but we are not adding it. We are not adding it. So right now it's just you can say it's a spontaneous movement. It's a spontaneous movement that is occurring, like the movement of substances that is on its own. Anything that is spontaneous mean it is on its own. So this is what we call as diffusion. And it can happen inside the liquid and it can happen inside the it can happen to a gas. Okay, let's see. Suppose yeah, there is another word. There is another word that we need to understand. Concentration gradient. What's a gradient?
The slope.
Hmm?
The slope.
We know about it as a slope. We know about it as a gradual difference. Like you can say that this is the intensity of red color in an area. Then below that, the intensity lessens. Then below that, it lessens a bit more. Then below that, more, more, and then ultimately the red color finishes. Now you would say this is a gradient, a gradual difference from higher to lower, high intensity to low intensity. That is the gradient. So in any particular, you can say in any particular solution or in any particular compound, always remember that the there is always a concentration gradient between two regions. Gradient means that suppose that you have a container. This is a container. And in this container, you have a very high amount of a molecule over here. Then it is gradually getting lesser, and till the end of the container, there is no molecule here. There is no molecule here at the end of the container. You can see that this is the gradient, the gradual difference from the area A to area B. So there are two terminologies that we often use. Something moving towards concentration gradient. Towards gradient means when you would use the word towards or along, it means higher to lower. The pattern of gradient, higher to lower. And there is another word, against. Against gradient, it means that lower to higher, meaning opposite in the direction of the gradient. The direction of gradient is always from higher to lower. So when you would say along or towards, it means it is along the pattern of gradient. But when would you say against, it means it is lower to higher. So that is the concept of the gradient. So now diffusion always occurs, always occurs along concentration gradient. concentration gradient. Okay, any question till here?
No.
Good. Next, let's talk about the examples of diffusion. No, rate of diffusion. Rate of diffusion. Remember that diffusion, if spontaneous, if we leave the diffusion to occur on its own, is a very, very slow process. Extremely slow process. If it is left to be occurring at on its own, that is very slow. But there are factors through which we can increase the speed. Increase the speed. Okay. Number one factor, steep gradient. Make a very steep gradient and you can easily increase the movement of the substances or the rate of diffusion. You can easily increase the rate of diffusion. So what the uh, that is what can increase the rate of diffusion. It should be steeper as much as could be, as it could be. That is what we often say it can increase the speed. The second factor, do you need explanation about the steeper gradient?
No.
Okay. Second factor through which we can increase the speed of diffusion is the temperature. Why the temperature?
Because it increases the energy of the particles.
Mm, you can say it provides the kinetic energy. You are not wrong. It increases the energy of the particle, but better to at name the proper energy. Third, increasing the surface area. The surface area. Okay, now what is the surface area, by the way?
The total area of like around the shape of all sides.
Yes,
At
the total surfaces. The total surfaces for exchange. What does it mean? Suppose this is a cell. This is a cell, and this is an animal cell, and the outer side is the surface. This is the surface. Now, this is another animal cell. Which cell has more surfaces?
which cell has the higher surface area?
Or which cell has more surfaces?
The second one.
The second one, the right one, or if I say the B
B.
one.
Yeah.
Mm. This is the meaning of surface area. Like when we increase the total surfaces available for exchange of substances, that is when we call as we increase the surface area, and whenever we increase the surface area, we can easily increase the rate of diffusion. How? Now you can simply, it is very simple, it's a common sense. The, over here you have only this region for the exchange. In this you have all small crevices here available for exchange. All small crevices here. You can easily exchange different things from here. So the larger the surface area, the higher would be the rate of diffusion. I'll put this into perspective when I'll explain the examples of the diffusion. Another very important thing is reducing distance. Distance is just like inversely proportional to the rate of diffusion. The larger the distance, the lower would be the rate of diffusion, and the smaller the distance, the higher would be the rate of diffusion. Suppose that you have these two surfaces, and this is the center. You need to exchange the substances between the center and the outer surface of the body. Which of the two bodies would be able to move the substance from the center to the outer surface more quickly? Hmm?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear it.
Which of the two surfaces A and B would have a higher diffusion rate from the center of the body till the outer surface?
Well, B. One, cause
So it means it would have higher rate of diffusion because it has smaller distance.
yeah.
So keeping the distance smallest means you can increase the rate of diffusion. So now putting it into perspective according to the cells with the help of examples. Remember that in the diffusion, the gradient is one of the top most priority. Let's talk about plants. In plants, you have a leaf, and the leaf produces oxygen and receives carbon dioxide. Now, if a leaf releases the oxygen, then where do you think the oxygen is highest in amount? Or maybe where do you think there is a higher concentration of oxygen? On the outside or inside of the leaf?
Inside. Wait,
You can
no,
also
outside.
Mhm.
Outside.
Outside. Okay. Now, okay, please try to understand. Your answer is not wrong, but is basically not right as well. See what happens. Try considering the total area available in leaf and equal area available outside. Like equal
Equal.
area available in the environment and the area available inside the leaf, which would have more oxygen, inside or outside? Hmm?
So it's the equal amount of concentration.
Okay, now remember that, okay, let me tell you in a particularly different way so that you can properly understand it. Remember that you are not wrong, but listen to me carefully. On the inside of a leaf, basically the pressure of oxygen inside is way higher than the pressure in the ambient environment, in the immediate environment. Pressure in the ambient or immediate environment. So the pressure gradient would cause the oxygen to leak outside or to be released outside. That is basically the concept over here. Remember that the total amount of oxygen has way more pressure than the immediate outside vicinity. That is why it's very easy for the oxygen to diffuse out. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. What about carbon dioxide? Why would the carbon dioxide go in?
Because there's a low concentration inside.
Why the carbon dioxide would be lower inside?
Not sure. Because of, um, I don't know.
Okay, how the photosynthesis occur?
Oh, so it's
You
related
know
to
the,
photosynthesis then, yeah. So the
I'm sorry.
formula for photosynthesis
Yeah. Equation.
is carbon dioxide plus water equals glucose plus water. So
So
it's required for the plant to have carbon dioxide coming inside.
this process is occurring inside the leaf. It means the plant is constantly consuming it. If the plant is constantly consuming the carbon dioxide, it means it is getting lower and lower and lower inside the leaf. So its concentration would get on, would move, sorry, would get lower and lower, and it would be diffusing in again and again, so that the plant can perform the photosynthesis. Got it?
Yeah.
So that is why it all happens. And I told you in the previous class that the mitochondria produces carbon dioxide because it performs the respiration. So in the process of respiration, oxygen is consumed and carbon dioxide is released. So suppose you have an animal cell, and in an animal cell, this is a mitochondria, and the carbon dioxide is being released and oxygen is being consumed. Now, what should be the movement of these gases?
Movement like inside, outside. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
So the carbon dioxide goes inside, right? And the oxygen goes outside.
outside the mitochondria,
Yeah.
the mitochondria is consuming oxygen. So how the oxygen would move outside the mitochondria?
So it would go in and the carbon dioxide would go out.
Yes, the carbon dioxide would go out because inside the cell, the carbon dioxide is in very high amount, but oxygen inside the cell is in very low amount. So oxygen would come in and carbon dioxide would move out. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, now this was about the cell. Let's talk about the diffusion in the alveoli. You know about the alveoli
Yes, in the lungs.
in the lungs. Now, in the alveoli, remember that this is the layer of alveolar. This basically is called as alveolar epithelium. Then this is the layer of blood vessels. This is the blood cell. This is the blood cell which is moving in this direction. And over here, oxygen is in very high amount and carbon dioxide in here is in very high amount. Now, why do you think the oxygen, where do you think the oxygen would move and why?
Wait, so repeat that question?
Where do you think the oxygen would move and why?
The oxygen would go inside and the carbon dioxide would go outside.
The oxygen would move inside, why? And the carbon dioxide would move outside, why? Why would they move on the relative sides? Hello?
Mm, I'm not sure.
Like obvious, oxygen is in very high amount. So it would directly move into the blood. And we have very small distance over here. So oxygen would straightforward move into the blood and carbon dioxide because of their relative concentrations. There is a very steep gradient. Did you get it?
Yeah.
There are many examples we can put for the process of diffusion. Like diffusion occurs also inside the human, other than this particular thing. But we must remember that the diffusion typically is a spontaneous movement, but we can increase its rate. And diffusion can occur. What substances can perform? Remember all gases, water, especially in vapor form, many other liquids, many other liquids, and organic molecules inside solution. All these can perform diffusion. Organic molecules inside solution means, let's say glucose. The glucose is the glucose can perform the diffusion. The glucose can move through the diffusion if the glucose is obviously present inside a solution. If it is present inside the solution, it can perform the diffusion. Got it?
Yes.
Mhm. The next type of passive movement is called as the osmosis. Again, passive. Okay, do you know about the osmosis?
The diffusion of water.
Okay, the diffusion of water. So if it is diffusion of water, then why we need to separate the osmosis from diffusion?
Because gas particles behave in a different way.
But I just said on the previous slide
Yeah.
that the water, especially in vapor form, can perform the diffusion. So why would we require, or why would we need to separate the diffusion or osmosis if it is the diffusion of water?
It's because this diffusion of water, isn't it across like inside the cells, like across a membrane, something like that?
Hmm, yes. Passive movement of water molecules from an area of higher water potential to an area of lower water potential through a partial, partially permeable membrane. This is the definition of osmosis. Now there are changed words, many changed words. So can we go one by one? Suppose that water potential. What is a water potential?
Water potential.
Hmm,
I don't know.
okay. Okay. So let's talk about the water potential. First, what is the potential?
The maximum efficiency something can reach.
Power or maybe capacity?
Yeah.
That is the potential. Now, the I can say that the water potential, I can refer it to as the power of water. Power of water. What does it mean? It means the total kinetic energy of water in a chamber. Suppose that you have a large container and it is divided by a partially permeable membrane into a large container divided by a partially permeable membrane, and the two chambers are A and B. One chamber is having a lot of water molecules and the other one is having less water molecules. For which one would you say that which one has a high water potential?
High water potential. Mm. So it has more free water molecules, right? So the higher potential one would be B.
Uh, right now, both of the chambers have free water molecules. Both of them have free water molecules. So, um,
So then it would
uh,
mean that it would be A because it has more of
yeah,
them.
more of them. So there would be more kinetic energy. There would be higher kinetic energy. There would be higher collisions. You can also say the extent of collision extent of collision can also explain the power of water. It means that higher the collisions, higher the collisions, more would be the water potential. So now, what would you say? Where would you experience more collisions?
A would have more collisions.
Yes. So I would say higher water potential would exist in A. A has more water potential than B. So let me open a new Jamboard. So now, if I refer you to the same chamber, what would be the direction of osmosis according to the definition?
Like, what do you mean direction? Like
Like obviously, the osmosis is the movement of water molecules.
from
So
higher to lower
to which direction?
concentration.
Higher to lower. Don't say concentration for osmosis. Always say water potential.
Higher water
For
potential to
osmosis, your
lower water
wording should be
potential.
changed. Yes, yes. So where should it move?
In the case of A and B,
Yeah,
so it would go from A to B.
A to B, exactly. So after movement, after osmosis, let's suppose that this is the same container possessing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 molecules of water over here and 10 molecules of water over here. So in this situation, you would see that the water potential of A equals to the water potential of B. Got it?
Yep.
But now adding few solute molecules, to chamber A. Now this is 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now you have added a few solute more 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, let's suppose. What is a solute, by the way?
A solute.
Hmm.
Solute is basically a dissolved substance.
Hmm. And what's a solvent?
Uh, solvent. Solvent is a liquid substance, right? That can dissolve.
That can dissolve other substances. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, suppose that uh, now listen to an example very carefully. Suppose that a group of students playing in a hall, maybe football, they're playing. A group of small children, they're playing football or maybe cricket in a hall indoor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you and someone comes and put 4 or 5 chairs in the middle of the hall. What would happen to the situation of the play
If
if the chairs are placed in that hall where the students are playing? What would happen
so
to
they would
the
disperse
sport?
to the edges.
I'm sorry?
They would like disperse to the edges of the court.
They would either disperse to the edges, or you would say it would totally disturb and lower their efficiency.
To lower their water potential? Or
Lower their efficiency. Right now, I'm talking about the kids playing in the
yeah,
hall.
but if it was water, like say they were water, then you would say
Yes.
that it would
So
lower their
basically,
water
what
potential.
happens? The solute would attach to water molecules, lower their kinetic energy. Now, both of the chambers have same water molecules, but if one chamber has lesser kinetic energy than the other, now what would you say? Which one has lower water potential? Lower kinetic energy means lower water potential. And lower water potential. Now, what would be your answer if we compare A and B?
Uh, Lower kinetic energy means lower water potential. So if you're adding the solute,
Mhm.
so that would lower the kinetic energy of A, right?
Of water in whatever the chamber you are adding the solute in.
So B would have a higher water potential because its kinetic energy hasn't been affected.
With respect to water potential, the A would have lesser water potential compared to B now. The situation is reversed. It means what would be the direction of osmosis?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What would be the direction of osmosis?
Direction of osmosis would be B to A.
Exactly. From higher water potential to lower water potential. That's basically the idea of osmosis. Now, what are the differences? Number one difference between the diffusion osmosis is the involvement of a membrane, of a membrane. Number two, diffusion is only for water. Sorry, osmosis is only for water. Diffusion can be done in water and in any other substance. Number three, number three, the diffusion only works on the principle of concentration gradient. I'm talking about diffusion. While in osmosis, you can clearly see that in the osmosis, you are talking about the water potential and the involvement of solute. In osmosis, water potential and involvement of solute. They don't matter in the diffusion. So you can always say that the osmosis would always be osmosis would always be in the direction of higher to lower water potential. Okay, now let's see. Mm, okay, I can give you 2 to 3 principles over here about this particular concept. Number one, if one of the two mediums have comparatively high solute, high solute, its water potential would be lower, would be lower. If one of the two mediums have comparatively high solute, its water potential would be lower. Second, the water would move where the solutes are higher. Solutes are higher. So these two principles would help you a lot. Number three, a pure water would have highest water potential compared to anything, while always have solutes in it. Because we are going to move towards the implication of the examples. Always have solutes in it. The side of lavas always have solutes in it. Let's talk about a potato. Suppose that you have 3 potato strips, one equal size, equal shape, equal length, everything equal. Second strip and a third strip. Always remember that potato is not a simple thing. The potato always have cells in it. Always have cells in it. Now, you put this particular strip in the pure water. This strip is added into a solution where the amount of solute outside equals the amount of solute inside. And the third one is added where there is very high solute outside. What do you think would happen? Which, this is A, B, C. Which potato strip gain, lose, or neither gain nor lose? Gain water, lose water, neither gain nor lose.
Okay. Um, very high solute outside, amount of solute outside equals inside. So the pure water would,
Hmm.
I think, neither.
In the pure water, neither would happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the
So you are
amount,
saying that A here. Okay. What about others?
others I'm not so sure of.
Okay. What did we say about the pure water? We said the pure water has highest water potential,
Yeah.
and potato have cells in it. If you would put the potato in the pure water, always the pure water would have the higher water potential. So it means that this potato strip would gain water because it has highest water potential. So the water would move in. Is that clear?
Yes.
Second, amount of solute outside is equal to inside, meaning that none of the solutions have higher or lower water potential. Amount of solute is equals outside and inside, so none has uh, higher or lower water potential. So neither would happen in B because no water potential is higher outside, no inside. They are equal. So it would happen in B. The strip B would neither gain water nor lose water. Got it?
Yeah.
C. Very high solute outside. It means outside, if the solute is higher, it means water potential is low. Water potential is low. It means the water is going to move outside, so it would be C. The potato strip would lose water, so it would happen in C. Is it clear or not?
Yep. It's clear.
Okay, just do one thing. Uh, read these from here, this particular slide from here till the end of this page. Got it?
Okay.
Now, focusing on these principles, try uh, try understanding the results that I have written over here. Can you process the results on the basis of the principles that mentioned over here?
Yeah, it makes sense now.
So that's the thing. Always remember where solute is higher, the water potential would always be lower. So it means the other medium would have to provide the water. Similarly, if the pure water is there, then the water potential, there is no question that there would be any medium that would have higher water potential compared to the pure water. And the third is, if the solutes are equal, then the water potential would also be equal, so no gain or no loss of water. Got the idea?
Yeah.
Good. So basically, this thing is osmosis, and the questions about this basically are asked. There is an artificial membrane that we have basically made, the scientists have made. They use it in the process of dialysis. You may have heard about this process. This particular balloon type thing, it is strictly there are knots on the opposite sides, and this is actually the partially permeable membrane. So we do our experiments mostly on this thing. This thing is called as whisking tubing, or they can also name it as a dialyzer membrane. So we do most of our experiments of water potential and the osmosis on this particular tubing. Got it?
Yeah.
Very good. So the rest of it we'll be talking in the next class. Diffusion and osmosis, plant cells. Yeah, I'll explain that tomorrow, how the plant cells would work. But many things need to be covered with respect to the papers. Some data with respect to the papers is missing in this book. So that is why we need to cover up many different examples so that we can do the past papers.